I wasn't invited to my daughter's wedding I funded. Now my daughter's marriage has collapsed and I'm the one she's calling. I never imagined something like this would happen to me. But here we are. Kane, my 28-year-old daughter, declined to ask me to her wedding. Let that settle in for a moment. I was kicked out of a wedding that I was literally paying for. I'm still trying to comprehend everything, but I thought putting it here could help me make sense of things, or at least rant a bit. First and foremost, let me say that Kane has always been difficult. Even as children, we experienced ups and downs. But what parent or child doesn't, right? Still, I never expected things would go to this point. Yes, we've had conflicts in the past, but nothing prepared me for this. Anyway, I will try to be as clear as possible. Kane has been with her fiancé Arthur for some years. They're not exactly wealthy, so when they started arranging the wedding, I offered to cover the costs. It seemed like a great gesture, and I wanted to assist them get off to a good start with their marriage. I know weddings are extremely expensive, but because they were struggling financially, I figured why not? It was my way of showing support. I was pleased to help, and I felt she would enjoy it. Isn't this a significant moment? Your daughter's wedding day marks the beginning of a new chapter in her life. I wasn't anticipating a party in my honor, but some appreciation would have been good. Not long later, everything began to spiral out of control. I recall one talk with Kane in which I was simply trying to be helpful. Hey Kane, I was thinking about the seating arrangement. Do you want me to look into renting extra chairs, or do you have that covered? She barely looked up from her phone, rather distracted. I think it's fine, Dad. We've got it handled. I raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? I don't mind helping. I can cover the cost of some extra stuff if you need it. I said we've got it, okay? She snapped, looking at me for the first time in a long time. I was taken aback. Hey, I'm just trying to make sure you have what you need. It's no trouble. She huffed, rolling her eyes. Well, we don't need you micromanaging everything, okay? We're good. Small things like these started to mount up. I wasn't asking for much, I was simply trying to help. I couldn't understand why she was so short with me when I was only trying to help. Fast forward a little, and the wedding planning appeared to be going very well. Kane appeared to have everything under control. I didn't get too caught up in the specifics. I didn't want to intrude. I trusted her to handle things. But one day, I thought it would be good to include my brother Louis on the guest list. He and Kane have always been close, so I didn't think it would be an issue. Just one more person, correct? Not a big deal. When I called the wedding coordinator to see if they could include Louis, things became awkward. When I asked, the planner sounded slightly uneasy. They hesitated and then informed me that the guest list was already full. Full? How is this possible? This is a wedding, not a movie theater. You can always make place for one more, right? I pushed a little, believing I had misunderstood and made a mistake. Finally, after some back and forth, the planner forwarded me the guest list. And let me tell you, as I opened that list, my heart stopped for a moment. I was not on it. Neither was Liliana, my wife. At that moment, I was more than bewildered. I assumed it had to be an error. How could my own daughter leave me out of her wedding guest list? Especially because I am the one paying for it. That made no sense. So I contacted the planner back, attempting to remain cool despite my rushing thoughts. I asked them directly, why aren't we on the guest list? The planner hesitated again before dropping the bomb. They informed me Kane had specifically instructed them not to invite me or Liliana. To add insult to injury, she requested additional security to ensure that we could not even enter the venue if we attempted. I just stood there, startled. I couldn't believe what I heard. To learn that my own daughter was organizing her wedding behind my back, and that she had hired security to keep me out. I mean, what the heck? At that point I was outraged. I asked the planner for proof, assuming there was a misunderstanding. Perhaps there was a miscommunication or something. But no. They forwarded me the emails, and they were in black and white. Kane had been planning this for weeks, and it was obvious I wasn't welcome. I just wasn't sure what to do. I felt absolutely betrayed. I always thought I was doing something good for her. She was intentionally preventing me from attending her wedding. I can't express how much that hurt. What struck me the most was not simply that she had left me off the guest list. It was the fact that she had planned it this way. It was not an accident. It was not an oversight. She went out of her way to make sure I wasn't there. And why? We'd had a few arguments over the years. I did not always agree with her decisions. That is part of being a parent. You strive to guide your children, even when they refuse to listen. I couldn't stop thinking about how many times I had supported her. I was always there for her when she struggled in school, when she was hanging out with a terrible crowd, or when we were in difficult situations. Even when she was upset with the world, I tried to be someone she could rely on, and now she's keeping me out of one of the most important events of her life. And I don't know why. I do not want to be the victim here, but it felt like a slap in the face. A cool, planned slap. I've seen her become irritated with me over minor issues, but she always comes around eventually. It felt strange. This felt permanent. After hanging up with the planner, I just stood there staring at the email. I must have read it 100 times, expecting to find something that made sense of it all, but nothing did. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. However, there was also a deep melancholy mixed in with the rage. It's difficult to define, but there's a sensation that comes over you when you realize your own child does not want you in their life. I kept asking myself what I'd done to deserve this. What could have gotten her this far? Sure, we've had our arguments, but I never imagined it would come to this, blocking me from her wedding and making sure I couldn't even attend if I wanted to. It was as if she were punishing me. But for what? I wish I could say that this section of the story had a magnificent finale, but it does not. I was left stunned, puzzled, and heartbroken. I wasn't sure what my next step would be, but one thing was certain. It wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was something far deeper, and I didn't know how to cure it. Well, after obtaining the guest list and not seeing my name anywhere, I was furious. I couldn't simply sit on that information and do nothing. How was I meant to pretend as if everything was fine after learning that my own daughter had refused to let me attend her wedding? I felt I needed to confront Kane and find out what was going on. I couldn't let it go without having some answers. So I tried to call her. No response. I tried again. It went directly to voicemail. That was how things went all day. I got it. She's preoccupied with wedding preparations and such. But I was anxious for clarity at that point. I wasn't sure if I was angry or wounded, but I needed to talk to her. I left her a voicemail, asking her to call me back. Nothing, only silence. The silence was driving me insane. After a day or two of no response, I had reached my limit. If she didn't come to me, I'd go to her. So I got into my car and proceeded to her apartment. She did not live far from me. To be honest, I had no idea what I was going to say. I knew I needed to talk to her in person. I thought she might be able to explain it. Perhaps we can speak it out. Or maybe I was foolish, expecting her to have a reasonable explanation for everything. I was pumped up with adrenaline when I arrived at her apartment. My thoughts were full of things I wanted to say, but I had no idea what to anticipate. I knocked on the door, and after what seemed like a lifetime, Kane answered. She stared at me as if she expected this confrontation and wasn't surprised I was there. That made me extra upset, but I tried to remain composed. There was no need to go crazy from the start, right? We remained there for a bit, and then she simply inquired, "What do you want, Dad?" As if I were an unexpected visitor. I informed her right away. "I want to know why my name isn't on the guest list. Why the hell did you block me from your wedding?" She sighed, rolled her eyes and remarked, "I knew you'd find out eventually." That infuriated me even more. I asked her again, trying to keep my voice steady, but it was shaking by this time. "Why, Kane? Why would you do this?" She said, "I saved you the trouble of having to show up." She stated it nonchalantly, like if the whole incident was no great deal. I was standing there, about to burst, and she was acting as if it were any other Wednesday afternoon. "I'll send you the pictures if I have time," she said with an apathetic shrug. That was when I lost it. I couldn't hold back any longer. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I exclaimed. I was shaking, full of wrath and disappointment. Is this how she treated me after everything I had done for her? I didn't get it. How could a daughter refuse to allow her own father to attend her wedding and then act as if nothing happened? But it did not end there. She still had more to say, and none of it was positive. She began reciting all the reasons why she believed I deserved to be left off the guest list. She claimed I was never on her side, that I was always against her, and that I flaunted Liliana, my wife and her stepmother, in front of her. She even brought up topics from years ago, which I believed we had gone over. She mentioned moments when she needed me to stick up for her but I didn't, such as when she got into a fight with her cousin, or when she was having problems at school. I am not going to lie. Sometimes I couldn't defend her. She wasn't always correct, and I wasn't going to defend her when she was clearly incorrect. I tried explaining it to her, But she didn't listen. She was sure that I had been against her for years, that I had abandoned her, and that the entire wedding was her method of getting back at me. She even mentioned stuff from her younger years, such as the time she was caught with medications. Yes, she went through difficult times, but I was there for her. I supported her through it all, even when it was difficult. I didn't abandon her when she needed aid. I attempted to guide her, get her the assistance she required, and keep her on the correct course. But clearly, none of this mattered. In her mind, I had failed her in all the ways that mattered. Standing there, listening to her vent all of her rage, I realized how deep her animosity was. It wasn't only about the wedding. I had no idea she was hiding years of pent-up frustration. And the way she was flinging it all at me now, as if it was my fault she was so twisted up, was simply too much. At some point, I began to cry. I hadn't even planned it. It's just happened. I practically begged her. What did I do that was so terrible, Kane? Why are you treating me like this? I hoped, deep down, that she would show some guilt or empathy, that she would soften even little. But no. She stayed cold. You were never on my side, she said. You always cared more about your new life with Liliana. You didn't care about me. That hit me like a blow in the stomach. I attempted to convey to her that I'd always cared about her, and that I loved her above all else. However, she was persuaded that I had prioritized my new family over her. I wasn't sure what to say. I was simply standing in her doorway, trying to figure out how we got to this point. She did not want me at her wedding. Apparently, she did not want me in her life, and nothing I said would change that. It felt as if we were speaking two different languages. Every time I tried to explain myself, she would bring up something else, as if she had kept track of all the times I had let her down over the years. She eventually admitted that I had just brought negativity into her life. And then she said, I had to leave. I was not welcomed at the wedding or in her life. If I can't accept it, that's too bad. I walked out of there, defeated. I didn't know what else to do. My own daughter didn't want me at her wedding, and no matter how hard I tried to understand why, it all came down to this bitterness she'd been harboring for years. I felt lost, heartbroken, and more bewildered than ever. After leaving Kane's place that day, I was a wreck. I wasn't sure what to do or where to go from there. The entire confrontation felt pointless, and everything she said kept replaying in my thoughts. I tried to hold it together, but I was absolutely taken aback by her rage toward me. I knew we weren't very close, but learning that she thought so little of me hurt. A few days later, I still hadn't heard from her. I was attempting to give her some space, hoping that she might reconsider or at least calm down enough to speak logically. But deep inside, I knew it wouldn't happen. The wedding was quickly approaching, and I wasn't sure if I should just sit back and pretend everything was fine. I couldn't do it. I was at home with my wife, Liliana, explaining all that had transpired. Liliana has always been patient with Kane, far more so than I have been, but even she was fed up at this point. She told me it was time to stop allowing Kane to walk all over me. She was correct. I'd spent so long trying to make Kane happy and keep our relationship peaceful, but it never seemed to be enough. It felt as if no matter what I tried, I could never win. That's when I made the life-altering decision. I couldn't keep paying for a wedding that I wasn't invited to. Think about it. I was paying for this massive celebration, including the location and food, and I wasn't even permitted to attend. It appeared ludicrous to me. And when I thought about it, I realized Kane didn't care. She didn't care whether I was wounded. She didn't care how much money I had spent. She didn't care about anything other than herself. So I picked up the phone and contacted the venue. I told them to cancel everything. I knew I wouldn't get my deposits back, but at that point, I didn't care. It wasn't about that anymore. I couldn't bear the thought of her going ahead with this wedding while I was treated as if I didn't exist. I had to draw a line, even though it hurt. The venue management was taken aback when I urged him to cancel. I suppose it isn't every day that someone cancels a wedding, especially so close to the date. But I did not hesitate. I urged him to tell the caterers, decorators, and everyone. She paid the wedding planner. I know some will accuse me of being petty, that I should have simply let her have her wedding and dealt with the consequences afterward. But here's the thing. It wasn't all about the wedding. It was about respect. I was her father, yet she treated me as if I didn't matter. I wasn't going to stand there and let her use me. I was not going to be her doormat longer. After making the call, I sat down with Liliana, and we discussed it. She fully backed my decision. She said something that I'll never forget. If she doesn't respect you enough to invite you to her wedding, she doesn't deserve your money. And she was correct. For years I had sacrificed everything for Kane, always attempting to be the greater person and always giving in. But it was enough. The following day, things really began to unravel. The wedding planner called, frantic, saying they couldn't get into the site to begin setting things. Apparently, the venue staff had already begun tearing everything down. When Kane found out, I can only imagine her reaction. I wasn't there to see it, but a friend described it as complete chaos. Guests were bewildered, vendors arrived with nowhere to set up, and no one knew what was going on. Kane tried contacting me, but I didn't answer. I wasn't in the mood for another screaming match, and I didn't owe her any more explanations. She made her decision, and now she had to face the consequences. I knew she would be furious, but after everything she had put me through, I didn't mind. Let her work things out. That following night, she arrived at my residence. I wasn't very surprised. Kane isn't the type to let go. But I was not going to have another face-to-face confrontation with her. I needed space. Therefore I had already altered the gate code so she couldn't walk in. I wasn't hiding or anything, but I wasn't going to let her come in and yell at me. I'd had enough with her words. She hammered on the gate for a long time, yelling at me to come out. I sat inside and listened without replying. There was nothing more to say. She'd made it clear where we stood, and this was my way of saying I wasn't going to keep letting her take advantage of me. Finally, she gave up and departed. But I knew it was not over. Later I spoke with my parents, and they weren't pleased with how I handled everything. They would remark things like, "You can't be so hard on your own daughter. Parents should never abandon their children, no matter what." I understood where they were coming from, but they didn't see what I'd endured over the years. They didn't witness her persistent disrespect, attitude of entitlement, or the way she handled Liliana and myself. They thought I was being overly harsh, but I was not going to change my views. I was not going to tolerate Kane's actions any longer. The entire situation left me with mixed feelings. On the one hand, I knew I had done the right thing by advocating for myself. But on the other side, she was my daughter. No matter how badly she damaged me, I still felt a sense of remorse in the back of my mind. I kept wondering, had I gone too far? Should I have just let her have her wedding and dealt with everything afterwards? But then I remembered how she looked me in the eyes and said she didn't want me there. That was the moment I realized I couldn't continue sacrificing myself for her. So, that's how it ended up. Kane's wedding plans were in tatters, and I wondered whether there was ever a hope of reconciliation. But at the end of the day, I needed to protect myself. I needed to keep my peace, even if it meant losing my kid in the process. And I honestly don't regret it. I expected some blowback from the wedding cancellation, but I had no idea how rapidly everything would crumble. The wedding planner called me in utter distress the day after I canceled the venue. He began off politely, attempting to explain the problem, but it was clear he was losing control. The venue had already begun shutting down operations, and the caterers and decorators were unable to enter. Apparently, when they arrived at the venue that morning, security showed them the cancellation email I had sent. And that's when everything broke apart. He was calling to see if there was any way to save the situation, but I was done being polite. I opened up to him. "I'm not paying for anything. The wedding can go to hell. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't exist anymore." He sputtered, attempting to reason with me, but I refused to budge. I'd made my decision, and I wasn't going to be pushed, simply because everyone else was losing their heads. He kept talking about how the suppliers needed to be paid, and how there was still time to remedy things if I just paid the remaining bills. I broke him off and said, "That's not my problem anymore. You'll have to talk to Kane about it." I then hung up. Part of me felt sorry for him. He was simply doing his job. But this scenario was no longer my mess to clean up. Kane had made it clear that she did not want me involved, so I am giving her precisely what she requested. I wasn't going to continue being the one to repair things. What happened next, I didn't find out till later. But allegedly, when Kane got to the location and discovered that everything had been canceled, she completely lost it. I mean, a complete meltdown. According to what I've heard, she arrived expecting to find everything set up and ready to go, but instead found the space empty. No tables, decorations, caterers, or anything. Just a barred gate, and a perplexed security guard told her she couldn't enter. She tried to phone me again, but I had already blocked her number. I wasn't going to cope with another scream match. I suppose she assumed I was bluffing or that I would back down at the last minute. However, When she understood I was serious, things quickly escalated. When security told her she couldn't enter, she exploded. According to what I've been told, she began shrieking at the security officers, demanding to be let in, even threatening to sue the venue, which, let's be honest, was not going to get her anywhere. She attempted to push her way in once, which prompted the guards to call the cops. If Arthur, her fiancé, hadn't arrived just in time, I'm sure she'd have been jailed for trespassing. He was able to calm her down just before things went fully out of control. But by then, the harm had been done. Her ideal day was officially shattered. While all of the pandemonium was unfolding at the venue, I was at home, waiting for the inevitable knock on the door. I knew Kane wouldn't let anything like this go, and she showed up later that evening. She was knocking on the fence and shouting for me to come out, but I remained inside. I'd already concluded there was no use in engaging in another dispute. We had said everything there was to say. I could hear her yelling, telling me that I had ruined everything and was being selfish. Part of me wanted to go out and talk to her, explaining why I did what I did. But another part of me knew it wouldn't do anything. Kane had made up her mind about me a long time ago, and nothing I said would change it. So I stayed inside and let her vent, till she finally gave up and left. After she departed, I sat down with Liliana and we discussed what had happened. Liliana, as usual, was supportive. She continued telling me that I had done the right thing and that it was time I stood up for myself. But I couldn't help feeling conflicted. On the one hand, I realized I needed to draw a line. Kane's conduct had been out of control for years, and this was the last straw. However, I couldn't shake the guilt of ruining my own daughter's wedding. As the days passed, information traveled across the family about what had occurred. I still hadn't told anyone, but it appears that Kane went around telling her version of the story to everybody who would listen. I immediately had calls from family asking why I had done it, why I couldn't simply let her have her day. My parents were really disappointed. They disagreed with Kane's treatment of me, but they believed I should have allowed the wedding to go and dealt with the consequences afterward. I tried to convey that it was more than just the wedding. It was the culmination of years of hatred and disrespect. I couldn't keep being the one who fixed things, especially since she didn't want me there in the first place. I said they didn't understand. To them, it was just another father-daughter disagreement that could be resolved with time. But, to me, it felt much greater. It was more than simply a brawl. It felt like a watershed moment in our relationship, and I wasn't sure how to proceed. The remainder of the week was calm. Kane did not contact me again, and neither did I. I tried to allow myself some time to comprehend things, but the guilt kept seeping in. I kept thinking, was I being too harsh? Should I have just swallowed it up and let the wedding happen? I told Liliana about it again, and she reminded me of all the times Kane had walked all over me, and how I had given in just to keep the peace. She was correct. I spent years bending over backwards to keep Kane happy. And where did it lead me? She was left out of her wedding, one of the most important times of her life. There comes a time when you have had enough. I recall the way she looked at me in that last confrontation, cold and dismissive. And I knew I couldn't argue with her. This wasn't a minor argument. It was the culmination of years of bottled-up rage and hatred, and it was evident she was not going to back down. So that's how everything went down during the wedding. It wasn't pretty, and it was certainly not easy. But at the end of the day, I had to stand my ground. Even though I felt awful, I realized I couldn't keep allowing myself to be walked over. The fallout was messy but necessary. A few months later, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Arthur, Kane's husband. I immediately tightened up, fearing that anything had happened to her. He assured me that she was all right, but that she preferred to see me in person. I was startled. I asked him why, but he said he'd explain when we met. He said he was in town, and that if I had time, we could meet for dinner. I consented, secretly hoping it was a meeting to reconcile Kane and myself. I assumed she wanted to see me but was too ashamed to confront me, so Arthur served as an intermediary. I went with a lot of optimism. After all, I am her father. To my disappointment, Arthur was alone. When I asked about Kane, he stated he didn't know. My heart fell and I inquired about what had happened to her and whether she was all right. He informed me that they were separated. He then revealed that Kane was abusive in their marriage and suffered from severe rage issues. That she tossed and smashed objects about the house, even during minor fights. Arthur put up with it for as long as he could, but when it became too much, he parted from her. He informed me Kane had a psychological problem, and was always blaming others for whatever inconvenience she experienced. She was continuously fighting with him because they had to relocate to a distant place, when better career chances became available for Arthur. That change has no negative consequences for Kane. She found a job with a comparable wage in the same city. Nonetheless, she was unhappy about leaving her homeland. And that was only one thing. Kane was often furious with Arthur and battled him regularly. He mentioned another reason he wanted to visit me in person. He wished to apologize. He told me that he observed Kane's violence to me, Liliana, and even my parents, but did not act because Kane had turned him against us. He claimed he brought suffering on himself by ignoring all warning indications. I replied that it wasn't his fault, but Kane's. Maybe I'm also to blame for not knowing how to better raise her. I also apologized to him for what he had gone through while with her. Arthur asked me for one final favor. He added that Kane was saddened by the separation and begged him to return to her, but he had ceased loving her due to the abuse he had endured. He wished her the best. He asked if I could reach out to her and help her through these difficult times. She literally has no friends because she lost them all thanks to her temper, he told me. She doesn't have any real or permanent friends in her life. He asked me to take her to therapy or anything like that. I told him I wanted to, but she would not let me near her. He understood my situation, and I understood his. We both wanted to help Kane, if she would let us. After understanding all of this, I couldn't help but visit Kane. And that was just what I expected. She launched an attack on me and Liliana. Even though I went alone, I didn't want Liliana to see Kane's rage. I apologized to her, hoping to calm her down. At that point, I didn't consider what was right or wrong. She was going through a difficult moment, and I wanted to help. I told her she could curse me all she wanted, but she needed to go to a therapist first. She refused to listen, and began bringing up things from the past. She yelled that she despised Liliana so much that she wanted to murder her. She stated she didn't want us at her wedding because she was embarrassed to introduce Liliana as her stepmother. She was ashamed of Liliana, as well as of my marriage to her. She refused to listen to me and threw me out of the house. She blamed me for all of her problems in life. I got up and said, I tried. But now I won't try again. There is a limit to patience, and I just exceeded it. Have a nice day, Kane. Then I walked out. Slowly. Deliberately. Without looking back. I did not bang the door. I did not raise my voice. I've just departed. Because there was nothing more to say. She had expressed her feelings clearly. So did I. It had been 2 years since that day. In that time, I've repaired aspects of myself that I hadn't even realized were broken. I stopped explaining. I stopped justifying. Most importantly, I gave up hope. Whenever someone attempts to bring her up, whether it's a question, a rumor, or a casual comment, I quickly shut it down. I simply respond, I'd rather not talk about that, and leave it at that. I no longer owe anyone an explanation. I'm at peace with my decision. I sleep better. I can breathe easier. Liliana and I are still together. A few days ago, my mother called. Her tone was soft and cautious, as if she was unsure where to begin. Gavin, I thought you should know. Kane's in a mental health center. I did not respond. I just listened. She's not doing well, my mother said hesitantly. They say she's struggling emotionally, mentally. Nonetheless, I said nothing. Finally she said, Do you think you'll go see her? I paused. Not because I was unsure but because I wanted to ensure she heard me correctly the first time. No, I replied. Not anymore. There was stillness on the other end of the line, but I didn't break it. I'd spent far too much of my life filling gaps that weren't mine to fill. I'm not saying this in anger. I say that with acceptance. I tried again and again. I tried. But attempting turned into survival. Surviving became surrender. There comes a time when you have had enough. And for me, that moment arrived a long time ago.